Joining us. I'm going to make sure we're going. Yeah, we are live streaming on Facebook, and I'm going to click record on Zoom, and we're recording to the cloud. Okay, so thank you for joining me. This is Hart Hagen with the Climate Report and Water and Climate, Soil for Climate. I'm here with Tanya Roa. Tanya, how are you doing today? Did I pronounce your name? Is it Roa or Roe?
Roa, you're right.
Roa,
and
okay.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Glad you're with us. So Tanya is the Digital Communication Director at Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, a nonprofit organization that spreads Tanya or Tanya? Sorry.
Tanya's fine.
Tanya, okay, good. So Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, tremendous organization. It spreads awareness for the powerful potential of ecological restoration. Tanya graduated from Tufts University with a Master of Science in Animals and Public Policy. Her academic research focused on wildlife conservation efforts and the impacts that human activities have on wild habitats. Tanya emphasizes the connection between planet, human, and animal health. That sounds great. So what we're going to talk about is we collaborated to prepare for this. And our thesis is that we believe the climate conversation needs to focus more on ethics and social justice and not just seeing the climate problem as a technical problem. And too often climate solutions, in quotes, create problems, especially for the miners and farmers and factory workers and people that have to handle toxic materials. The solution is to demand that all of our decisions and policies be ethical with a full accounting of their impacts on people, what is broadly termed social justice. So, Tanya, how did we get into this mess? Why did we come up with this topic? Why is this topic important?
Yeah, I just started diving into this topic recently. The Black Lives Matter protests last year really are what inspired me to look more into how these issues of racial, social justice have to do with environmentalism, because we tend to think of these as separate movements, civil rights movement, the women's movement, just very like, this is separate and it doesn't have to do with me because I'm not in that community. But when you look into how everything is so connected, it hits you, especially for us environmentalists. If we want to see a cleaner and greener world, then we have to include all species that are on this planet, and that includes humans. So just realizing how people are very impacted by the environment, by the water that they drink, by the air that they breathe, by the food that they eat. And so because of that, because it all relies on nature, and because we're a part of nature, it just goes kind of hand in hand that we need to also be paying attention to all these issues.
Right. I can't prove this, but from a visceral standpoint, it just seems to me that rhetorical question, how are we going to solve the climate problem if we don't treat people with the utmost respect? How can we possibly solve the climate problem if we are relying on solutions that dehumanize people? If Definitely. You think about how we dehumanize people in the process of, the slave labor for mines, the low wage and exploitative labor for assembly and transport of these devices. And so anyway.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's I don't know how that saying goes, but I think it's the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
Yeah.
It might be Albert Einstein who said that.
Yeah, something like right. Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's the quote that I think about all the time, because it's not just about energy, or it's not just about food, it's not just about water, it's all these things. And the basis of all these things is a philosophy, right? The philosophy of humans being over other species and certain humans being over other humans. And so it's just, we have to rethink and redo everything, or else we're just going to create new systems that have the same philosophies. And so eventually we'll just, come up with other crises. We'll be back in the same boat, if we even get to that chance, because the way that I see it is, if we don't redo everything, then we probably will not recreate any new systems.
So what do you see you look around you, and what do you see in the systems around us that really need serious rethinking?
Ooh, where to begin? I think a big thing is redefining how we view each other and communities. The downside of social justice, maybe not downside, but just what happens when social justice is that it's still playing into the arbitrary divide, right? It's still going along with, oh, we need to work with this community because this community has been harmed, which is very true. And it's, of course, needs to be done. But at the end of the day, we're all human. At the end of the day, we all need to make sure that everyone is cared for. And so I think for now we need social justice, but ideally, eventually, we won't need that. And ideally, eventually, it will just come to real equality and real equity for everybody.
Well, one thing that comes to mind when you're saying that is that too often, like, social justice, as we conceive of it and as we practice it, is a Band-Aid. We're creating open wounds, putting Band-Aids on the open wounds. And then, whatever conception we have of social justice is just so inadequate to the task. And I feel like, like one of my principles is first, do no harm. It's from the Hippocratic Oath, what doctors and medical professionals take, but it applies, I think, not just to medicine, but to ethics. Don't do any harm. And that's challenging because, like, okay, yeah, I have an iPhone and people were harmed in the production of this iPhone. I'm on a laptop and drive a vehicle. So it's hard at the individual level, and I'm not making excuses. And but the onus, we have to solve things at a systemic level, and we have to, when we have a device that is exploitative in the supply chain, then we have to think, this is not a solution. If we're pointing to this thing and acting like it's a solution, this is not a solution. And another thing you said is, like, another thing that Einstein said is that you can't solve a problem at the level of thinking that caused the problem. So what is it? How would you, if a Martian came down and didn't know anything about Earth, and you were explaining to this Martian what situation we're in and what we need to do, what would you say about, it's not a very good question, but how would you orient them to where we really are right now?
I think it's a great question. I think we have to, go back to the beginning. How do we even get here, right? Because how can we move forward, and how can we decide how to change what we're doing if we don't even know how we got here in the first place? And the way I see it is that many people did cause harm, and many people probably not even realizing it. I mean, back then, I think people who were sailing across the seas and who were throwing stuff overboard because they just saw the ocean as this vast blue thing that never ended. How can you know what's underneath if you don't have the technology that we have now, if you don't have the same opportunities? So a lot of people did cause harm to the planet unknowingly, but a lot of people did cause harm to the planet and other people. And so it's knowing how to, you can't even quantify or even calculate how much reparations, how much needs to be changed in order for that to ever be okay, because that probably will never happen. It's just been too long that we haven't had those true changes and true justice. But moving forward, how can we at least move closer to there? Because I think especially in these past 2 years, it has been more known, and younger generations, even younger than me, are adamant about this. So it is time that we actually figure out ways of not making this no longer a theory, of no longer it being, yes, we need to progress as a society. Okay, but what does that mean? And that means so many different things for different people. So at the end of the day, it's just giving those communities the say that they've been wanting for all this time, because every community, every person is going to want something different, which is great as long as it's good for them and it doesn't hurt other people, right? So the community should have their say as long as it is for them and by them. And of course, as long as it doesn't harm other communities in doing so.
Yeah. So one thing I hear you saying is that, okay, in the past, cut them some slack. They didn't know what they were doing. But then going forward, we have what?
Some people, I'll cut you some slack, not all the people.
I'm not here to cut anybody slack. I mean,
right.
Anyway, I mean, if you look at Columbus, it's just horrifying. I mean, in his own diary, it is horrifying what he was willing to do. And like the word gold is mentioned 75 times in his certain, maybe the entire diaries. And it's like he arrived on Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and Dominican Republic. And oh, these people are so friendly and docile and handsome. And then a page or two later, they would make great servants and we could subjugate them with 75 men. It was all about greed and exploitation. And this, Columbus has been lionized. And, it's like, name your national hero. We have the wrong heroes. We don't learn our history. It's like Orwell said, whoever controls the past controls the future. Actually, he said, whoever controls the past controls the present, who controls the present controls the future, or no, something like that. But whoever makes up our mythology and makes up our history, tells us what to, then that sets us off on a course. And we're walking around in this fog, and this is me up until a few short years ago. You're walking around in this fog, not knowing what really happened in the past, and therefore not really properly understanding the present or what we should be aspiring to in the future. And the exploitation of, let's say, the last 500 years has not been, in my view, the result of human nature. It's been the result of the nature of the people that are in charge, and that's a tiny fraction. So we have to understand who's in charge, and we really have to understand how power works and not be under any illusions about who's keeping this thing in place as it is, and what institutions need to be reformed or revised or eliminated, what mythology needs to be dispelled, etc.
Oh, certainly. And how they obtain that power, right? We have democracy, but even then, a lot of democratic systems aren't true democracy. So I think what I mean, cut some slack is have compassion towards the people more recently, because there is this divide in, us, people that I'm in my 20s, I'm 25. So people that are around my age and younger may look at it as, older people did this, older people, anyone older than us. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, a lot of us, and even us still to today, I drive a vehicle as well. Just by living in the US, I do so much more harm to the planet and people around me just because I live here. Exactly. So it's more of understanding that the people who are forced to live in the system around them just so they can survive, we have to have compassion towards each other. Of course, not the people who are knowing what they're doing and keep doing it. No, those are exactly the kind of systems that we need to basically dismantle so we can create new ones.
Yeah, exactly. That makes you a revolutionary, and that makes you dangerous. You're dangerous.
Oh no, don't tell them.
Yeah. So I have in my hot little hands here, Tanya's 5 ways that effective climate action depends on social justice. So let's talk about these, your 5 ways to connect, and just to review and refresh that you and I agree that there's not going to be a solution to the climate crisis unless there is social justice. So the first thing you have here is that rural community, okay, number 1, rural communities being displaced as they can no longer grow, raise, forage, hunt for food due to extreme weather conditions, i.e. droughts and floods. So you're talking about rural community, primarily like in other countries. But what do you mean by that? Rural communities being displaced, and why is fixing that a solution, a climate solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we think of climate, if we only think of emissions, or if we only think of the earth and not all the people and all the species and all the processes, cycles that are part of the earth, then it's very easy to not see how issues like worker rights, or issues like food deserts don't play into climate. But it's actually all, because it's also connected, then it has to come into play. And rural communities, it could be farmers, it could be gardeners, it could be really anyone who grows food, because at the end of the day, even urban communities rely on that food. We may not understand that that's where food comes from, but it does. So in other countries, it could be seen as a larger problem only because other countries are being more hit as of now, but that could soon change. It could start becoming more soon, probably. And we have seen it. I live in California, so I know with the wildfires, we can't sustain that system for long. We can't keep growing food in California if it's just all going to burn. Mm-hmm. And to give an example for that as well, going on with the wildfires, a lot of undocumented workers were still picking up fruit and food when that was happening. So while I was being told, stay inside, don't go outside, it's dangerous for you to breathe, we had people working outside with not enough protective equipment. So it's things like that. It's realizing that if we want to work with the environment, if we want to maintain this fertile ground, this fertile soil to grow that food that everyone needs, then we need to make sure that we also take into account the people that are picking that food, the people that are feeding the nation and the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that comes to mind there is, okay, so we're talking about food deserts. We're talking about whether it's rural or urban. We're not doing a very good job these days of growing food locally. Mm-hmm. And one reason for that is that you have trade deals, you have agricultural policy, domestic agricultural policy, and trade deals, and then you have trade deals that involve the import and export of products. And it's all geared to big corporations. For one thing, we artificially impose, we go to a small country and say, we're going to make a deal with you and you're going to organize your economy for exports. And you're going to organize your economy so that you have to export food to us and you have to import products, including food, that we have to sell you. And it's just the weight of public policy works against local production of food.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think you actually sent me and I probably will not do this justice, so please correct me, that your city or your town is passing something to combat that, right? They're going to start allowing people to grow food. I know Maine just passed a law as well, saying that I think it's right to food is how they're right to choose your food, or right to grow your food is how they're wording it. But that's so new. I mean, that's not heard of. So
right. Yeah, we have some good organizations in town that I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. We have some good organizations that are kind of lobbying the city government and Metro Council to have some things changed so that people can grow gardens in their yard. And so that people can have access to vacant lots, so that they can, if they want to grow food, they can get help from the Agricultural Extension Service. And one of them is called Food in Neighborhoods, which is a good group. Another one is the Urban Agriculture Coalition. Another one is forget the other one, but anyway, these are good people that I have some dealings with, and I'm happy that they're doing what they're doing. And I think, I'm glad we have that. On the one hand, it's at the early stages. On the other hand, it's very well organized, and it's been going strong for at least the last couple of years. And just, they work at it and they work at it and they work at it, and they're trying to get things changed. So yeah, that's about all I have to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's ridiculous that we even have to ask to be able to grow food in our backyards. So it's things like that. It's zoning, it's policies, like you said, that really they're arbitrary. They don't need to be there. They just are to maintain the status quo. So yeah, it's about flipping everything around, turning everything around, putting it back into the hands of individuals and to local people. I mean, we're so big in the US on farmers markets. Everyone seems to love their local farmers market, but that doesn't have to be something that is so trendy or so only in certain areas. It should be something that we see everywhere for everybody.
It should be. And the economics comes at it from all sides. You have to, what's the price of land? How many people are already doing this? How many people just have never thought about it? And if you can get like super cheap junk food, then that's a factor. And if it is or is not taught in schools, if it is or is not part of your local, just community, that kind of thing. So another aspect of that is the weed ordinance, which is in most cities and homeowner associations have some version of this where they make you mow, and you can't, your grass can't be more than 10 inches tall. And, if you think about that, and it ends up, it's kind of arbitrary as to, this code enforcement official comes along, somebody may or may not complain. It depends on whether somebody complains. It depends on, and some of these people that want to buy properties they look up code violations and try to make that an issue. And, but from where I'm coming from, it's like, we're requiring people to mow. Think of all the carbon that comes out of a mower. Think of all the pollutants that come out of a mower. And we're mowing. Where I am, hundreds of trees per acre, hundreds of tree seedlings per acre will grow if we let them grow. But if we mow them down, we're not letting them grow. I've got, I don't mow very much. I've got maple, catalpa, what else? Hackberry and oak in my backyard just coming up. And I put a stake by them, and, not like I'm all that, but if we let things grow, then there's more for water. So when it rains, it's going to catch more. And then there's transpiration and evaporation, and when you let things grow, then the carbon gets injected. The growing things take carbon from the atmosphere, and it goes through their roots, and about a third of the carbon that plants get from the atmosphere gets injected into the ground, and that stimulates an underground ecosystem. And the more carbon you have in the ground, the more rainfall the ground absorbs when it does rain. And just so many chain reaction of benefits. But you negate all that if you have to get out there and mow because the city requires it, or because the neighbors expect it, or because it's what your parents did.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
Anti-lawn people here. We do not like the lawns whatsoever.
Well, yardens is a friend of mine. I don't know if he came up with the term. He always uses the term yardens. Gardens like in your yard. Yeah. So let's go to the next item.
Go
So
for it.
this is Tanya's 5 ways that effective climate action depends on social justice. Number 2, women are more likely to be displaced, but women strengthen their communities. So to talk about that, what is it that about the role and status and effects and work of women that has so much to do with social justice and climate?
Yeah, I think racial and social justice tend to be more prominent than gender justice, but gender justice is also very interconnected with the climate crisis. And we may not really see it here in the US, and that could be why it may not be as prominent, but it's very important for, I mean, even here we have women homemakers and we have women who also grow food. There are plenty of women farmers in the US, probably not nearly as many as there could be, but there are plenty. So making sure that they have the same amount of resources as men, making sure that they can leave their land if they need to, because they can get displaced. And so not only that, but women are just more likely to come with others, right? With their families, with children. And so it's more of making sure that families are staying intact. And what we've seen is there are movements to start growing more. In India, there's a huge movement to start growing more. Vijay Kumar is someone who is leading that, but I wouldn't even say he's leading that on his own. He is very much a leader who creates more leaders. And so we've had him in Biodiversity for Livable Climate for a few events. And what they're doing in Andhra Pradesh is just amazing. And it's mostly women. It's mostly women who come and join this movement to grow food, to raise food, and to give it all back to the local communities. So and in regenerative ways. So they know that they have to work with the nature, with the planet, to create the sustainable practices that they need to make sure that this isn't something that you just grow for a few years and then the land degrades. It's something that they want to keep doing for as long as possible. So it just shows that if we do want to make sure that everyone is able to take care of themselves in their own communities, then we have to make sure to include women.
Right. So let's see, what was I going to say? Vandana Shiva is a huge presence in the world of regenerative agriculture. She says that 2/3 of farmers are women. Also, worldwide, she quotes this a lot. It's based on a UN study, and you can find it at grain.org. But something like 75% of the food in the world is grown on 25% of the land. And conversely, all of this in big industrial agriculture grows less than 25% of the food in the world, according to this study by United Nations. And Vandana Shiva quotes that a lot. And okay, here's what I wanted to say. I've been thinking a lot lately about stability and how important stability is, and how little of it how much instability we have because of poverty, because basically, money calls the shots. Capital, to me, capitalism means different thing. It means two separate and distinct things. One of them is okay, and one of them is not okay. The small scale capitalism, small businesses, small farms, local economies, that's great. Large scale, but what capitalism is in reality is, if you bring the money, it's the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Whether it's a business, whether it's politics, whoever brings the money calls the shots. And that's why Columbus is so problematic. That's why the 500-year history of exploitation in North America and around the world is so problematic, because a few people are making the decisions, and a few people are empowered to make decisions because we've delegated decision-making to money. Not even people with money. Yes, people with money, but the money kind of has a life of its own. And it causes instability. It's like if you can dispossess an indigenous tribe or a horticultural tribe, or even just poor people trying to live in their own village, irrespective of whether they're hunter-gatherers or horticulturists or agriculturists, or irrespective of what they do. If you can buy up their land and drive them off their land, then that's instability. And that's going to, and another form, and not just buying their land, but creating economic conditions that make it hard for them to live where they are, live and prosper where they are. Now, you mentioned India. There's there's the Pani Foundation. There's the Andrew Millison has this 7-part video series that is excellent. I'm reviewing the 7 videos one by one by one, and I've seen them all, but I'm going back and writing a blog post about each one. But they have, the Pani Foundation is sponsoring this contest. They in the village, in the state of Maharashtra, it's the second most populous state in India's 28 states. And Maharashtra is where the Pani Foundation has had this contest. It's called the Water Cup. And 1,000 villages have successfully, already in 4 years, 1,000 villages have successfully gotten control of their water issues. They collect water as it falls. They use like swales on contour and strategic systems to recharge the groundwater, so that now they have water from the streams, water in the wells, water to drink. Now, 2 things: they no longer have to import water in tank trucks, because it rains 3 months of the year in the monsoon season, and then it's a 9-month dry season. Whatever rain you didn't catch in the monsoon season, it's gone forever. But you can in the monsoon, you can create earthworks, swales, etc., and ponds that catch the water during the monsoon season, and then the water flows throughout the dry season. 1,000 villages have done this. And then they're going to the next level in this other, but as a result, they don't have to import water in the tanker trucks. And even more, at least as important, they're more likely to make a living and they don't have to leave the village for months out of the year to work as day laborers, low wage jobs, who knows how many hours a day they have to work. So this is possible because you restore the water. The water makes trees and agricultural plants and grasses grow, and it increases the stability. And when people leave the village, sometimes I'm sure it's not the entire family. Sometimes it is the entire family. Even if the entire family has to go, then that's no way to live. Plus, you're taking families out of their village because of economic necessity. So how does that relate to women? I'm lost.
Well, that's a great point, because not only are you harming people, harming families, because as you said, they get displaced and they have to leave and flee. It's not even a choice at that point. There's no option really, if you're just trying to put food on the table and a roof over your head. But when you do this, when you use these regenerative practices, you're not only benefiting yourselves and the people around you, you're benefiting the earth. Because if they didn't do that, if they didn't harvest the water in helpful ways, then the water would just run right off. And so I'm sure in places like that, the animals are coming back, there's more green, there are more plants. So it's all these different earth cycles and all these different processes that are working together. And generally, what happens, I don't know how it is for people in that area, if the men go off and look for work while the women and children stay behind. But at least I'm from Colombia, and in general, Latin America, that's how it is, that a lot of our families are just separated because of that, because the men have to go look for work and the women and children are left behind. And so
It's devastating to a family.
It's devastating. And you're also, that also usually means the women don't have as many resources because of just biases, gender biases. They may not be able to get a certain job because of being women. So it's just making sure that they have the resources to take care of themselves and each other. That way you don't have to separate these families. And that way, if you do, at least they could have the resources to maintain what family they do have left.
Right. And so here's one thing about immigration. Rarely is it entirely voluntary. Rarely is it something you would choose if you had a choice. So, you know, the United States, and this is social justice and climate. But you know, the United States, through the Monroe Doctrine and the fact that the United States, we are an empire. We've always been an empire. We've never been anything but an empire. We were an empire before we were a country. We were a corporation before we were a colony. The Virginia colony was a corporation. But where was I going with that? So
immigration.
But yeah, immigration is it's not voluntary. So obviously it'd be easy to slam Americans for being unaware of how people actually but you know, that's more of a systemic thing. That's a function of our education system, but more importantly, the media and the manufacturing of consent and inventing reality is a title of a book by Michael Parenti. Our heads are filled with mythology, and we think that the people of Latin America are coming from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras primarily, especially Honduras. These are countries that are United States puppets. They're United States client states, and there was a coup in 2010 in Honduras that was supported by the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. And Manuel Zelaya was booted because he was going to see about raising the minimum wage. And now they have they have a problem with what's called impunity, where there's so much crime and the crimes there's no justice system that brings people to justice for having committed. But part of the reason for the crime is that the economic system has been so exploited and destroyed by the United States that people kind of move out of the legitimate economy into the drug economy, and people are deprived, for time immemorial, for 500 years, including in the present day, people have been driven off of their land at the point of a gun. People would be happy to be subsistence farmers on their land, but they're deprived of that opportunity because some plantation owner has taken over, and this is the reality that people don't understand when they act like, oh, these immigrants are coming in because they want to take what we have. Well, why are they coming?
Oh yeah, of course. It definitely goes both ways as well. So my parents came for what they think, or what they tell me is from the cartels and issues with that. But when you look more into it, and they don't obviously teach that over there either, it's very much a problem of US influence as well. Mm-hmm. So I wrote an article, and just more connecting it back to the environment, how climate migration, it's a result of these policies, these international policies. And a big one in Colombia is, and the Biden administration is actually using this program, is they just get these planes, it's an aerial spraying of pesticides.
Right.
And so you're actually harming.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's an aerial spraying. They did it for about 10 years. They ended it in 2015, or paused it more, I should say, because they realized, I wouldn't say they even realized it then, but I guess they finally admitted it, that it was a carcinogen.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's planes just going across, and the whole point of these planes is to target illicit crops, so marijuana and coca for cocaine. But it's just planes going across the land, so there's no way it can target just a certain crop, and there's no way it can target crops alone. You're spraying animals, you're spraying people,
Mm-hmm.
you're spraying their homes, you're spraying their water,
Mm-hmm.
you're spraying everything. So the Biden administration is currently looking to restart this, and of course, they've gotten criticism from it. But I actually wrote this piece like about a month ago, and I told my parents about it, and they were, they're the ones who flew here who fled their homes to come here, and they didn't know about it. They were like, we didn't even realize how much it was all connected to the environment. So this is what I mean by everything is so much more connected than we think. And we can easily say, of course, with the US media and the US education system, a lot of Americans don't know, but it goes both ways as well, because a lot of people in other countries don't realize what the US is doing to those countries.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface. I'm sure I don't even know everything that's happening, but that is something I have been looking into recently.
Yeah, well, for our listeners, give me just a minute to kind of soundbite a little bit. And that is, okay, so what you're talking about is a program. The herbicide that's being sprayed is glyphosate, which is an herbicide, and it's used. It's the most widely used herbicide in the world. It's been discovered to be a carcinogen. The glyphosate is being sprayed from U.S. fighter planes. I've heard, and but it's part of the war on. So they're spraying marijuana plants and coca plants, but you can't just spray something. You're getting the spray. You're killing a lot of plants, not just the supposedly targeted plants. And this is part of the war on drugs. And one thing I've learned in the last year or so through, reading, if you know about the CIA, if you know about the war on drugs, if you know about U.S. foreign policy in Latin America, then you know that the war on drugs is crooked as the day is long. You've got government agencies. You don't know the difference between the government agencies and the drug dealers, because the government agencies are dealing the drugs. And the CIA deals drugs, the Drug Enforcement Agency deals drugs. We've got these, so a solution to all this would be to legalize drugs, and or at least stop making war. We could, if drugs are a problem, we could do it through treatment instead of imprisonment, and that kind of thing. And a lot of this, we should have learned from prohibition, from the prohibition of alcohol in the United States, from the late somewhat like 1919 to 1931. We should have. One thing that happened was that if alcohol is illegal, then only criminals are selling it. So there was a huge transfer of money and power to organized crime. Drugs are the same way. If it's illegal, then it's a huge transfer of power to organized crime. And this is a major reason for the violence in Mexico, for example. And it's just a mess. And there's nothing good to be said about any of it. And okay, one last thing, and that is, earlier I said we had to understand how power works. So we need to understand some of the institutions that are keeping this in place. We need to understand, like, who is incentivized to keep a bad system in place. And we just need to be aware. And Democrats are not one bit better than Republicans on any of this stuff. It's just, one of the main things, I'm just going to say one brief thing about this, but one of the main problems I feel in our political system is how Democratic Party loyalists are virtually incapable of critiquing their own party. They just do not criticize their own party, and they read from whatever songbook is handed to them by the media and politicians. That's about all I should probably say about that. But it's a center of power. You're talking about the top 10% or so. Democrats tend to be like the people that really are active and they vote in the Democratic. They tend to be the professional managerial class. They tend to be well graduated. They tend to be the top 10%, and they're this powerful group of people who are helping keep this system in place. That's all.
Yeah, I think just to kind of start wrapping it up a little bit, to bring it back to the main thesis, the main reason why we're talking about all this, I think we both did, is just how it's just recognizing how these goals are aligned, one, and that gives us so much power, right? That gives us so much, maybe power is the wrong word to use in light of all this, but it gives us so many solutions, because when all these things are hand in hand, you don't have to find solutions only for the climate crisis, only for social justice, and all these different ones separately, because then you're just thinking about so many policies and so many different avenues. But when you think of it all together and just empowering people, just empowering communities to take care of their own land, to take care of their own waterways, you come up with one solution, not one fits all, of course, because every community will be different, but one solution for that community. And then it automatically leads to benefits. And that's when you see the farms that do have regenerative practices, wildlife are coming back, birds are coming back to nest in those trees. There's many more microorganisms in the ground. Mm-hmm. So it naturally will fix itself as long as we give it a chance, as long as we give nature a chance. And all these policies that we discussed, such as the aerial spraying, that could just be, confronted differently. If we don't want these cartels, or we don't want these groups to have that power, then it's empowering the people, because a lot of people just go into, it's the same way with poaching in Africa, in parts of Africa. A lot of people that just, like I said, want to put food on the table. At the end of the day, that's all we want, right? We all want to just take care of each other. Yeah. So they will resort to these mm-hmm. Industries if they have to. But if mm-hmm. they don't have to, if they can grow their own food, mm-hmm. then we get rid of all of that. So yeah, and in essence, what I'm trying to say is to look at all these things differently, and to look at it from a human-centered point of view, rather than just us looking at it from above. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean from above?
From a supremacist point mm-hmm. of view, which mm-hmm. is either human supremacy, so us knowing what we need to do for other species because we know best, or certain people thinking they know what to do for other people because they know best. Just in general, all these systems of supremacy in different forms.
Right. So, a lot of there used to be a like back in the 90s, there was a famous book, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. It's like everything you need to know. It comes from the most basic principles, like doing no harm, like treating others like you would want to be treated. You could sum up my philosophy in large measure by 3 words: stop the theft. Stop stealing what people have. Stop stealing people's opportunities. Stop stealing people's land. Stop stealing people's money. Stop rigging economics and military and policing so as to be a serious burden on certain people. So, that's probably a good place to wrap up. Let me read this conclusion.
Yeah, I love that.
Tanya. Thank you. Let me read this conclusion that I wrote. And get your comments on it, and then we'll sign off. My conclusion says, as a movement, what kind of movement do we want to be? Talking about the climate movement. Do we want to be yet another technocratic and imperialist enterprise? Or do we want to have moral legitimacy? Do we want to do the right thing? Do we want to consider the needs of other people? Can we truly succeed in solving the climate problem if we don't put the needs of people first?
What I find ironic about these solutions that we've been talking about, these regenerative practices, these indigenous practices that have been around for a while, and it's just a matter of bringing them back. What I find funny is that they benefit everyone. I think it's, and it may, we may tend to say, oh, it's for these communities, and it may seem far off. It's for people in India, it's for people over there. That doesn't impact me. But because when we adopt this philosophy of interconnectedness, we realize that whatever happens in India, whatever happens in Africa, whatever happens in Latin America affects me here in California, and vice versa. And when something benefits them there, it benefits
Let me stop
me.
you. Let me stop you. So many people would hear what you just said and say, oh, that's squishy. That's idealistic. That's la la land.
Right. Yeah. I totally get that. I think it's because the earth itself is so interconnected, though, because if you have wildfires in California, the smoke is going to go towards Oregon, towards Arizona, towards other states. If we are in a drought here, we're going to take our water from those other states I just mentioned, from Colorado, and then I'm affecting people in Colorado. And so those are very just small examples I can think of right now. But because the earth is so interconnected, the oceans, oceans sea level rise, for example, that's going to affect so many different coasts. When those coasts are affected, people will migrate. When people migrate, they affect the people that they're migrating to. So it may seem idealistic, but that is just how things play out. And you may not be able to see all these things, and you may not even realize it until after the fact that, oh, that did impact me. And it's just a butterfly effect. It's just a domino effect. And it's working all the time and every moment, everywhere. So because of that, just because of how things work, because of all these interconnected things, it's going to have to happen that way, that we have to make sure we take everything into consideration, the bigger picture, or else we won't move forward. And that's why I just think it's funny that we have to really advocate for these solutions, because they're benefiting you, and they're benefiting me, and they're benefiting all of us. But because of that, we do need as many people on board. And there are millions of people working on this already, from different backgrounds, different geographic ranges, from different industries, but we just need more. It's just not enough because of those power structures that you touched on, that we really just need as many people as possible to make sure that the people in power don't continue the status quo.
Right. And I wasn't going to say this because it sounds like a can of worms, but this morning there's this hashtag on Twitter. It's called No More, and it originates from Ethiopia, but it's like U.S. is meddling in Ethiopia, and they're saying no. There's like 100,000 people have died because of some war that's like instigated by the U.S. and people are saying no more. And I got some hope when I saw that coverage and saw the people who were talking about it. It's like, okay, a lot of us know, not everybody knows about this, but a lot of us do. And we're here to say no more. Stop now. So maybe that's possible in our life. It has to be possible. But that's a great way to end, Tanya. Thank you so much for being with us. How do people get in touch with you? And how can people engage with Biodiversity for a Livable Climate?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. So you can visit us at bioforclimate.org. That's BIO number 4 climate.org. And there, if you want to reach out to me directly, I am Tania, TANIA .Roa ROA at bioforclimate.org. That's my email. So I love hearing from people and connecting with people. And as an organization, we also just love growing our community. And so, Har, thank you for now being part of our community and welcoming us into yours. It's great just to see how all of us are coming together, us, what we call eco restorers, just advocating for the planet and for every species on it.
Thank you for being here. We're going to have to continue this conversation real soon. I'm going to pause the recording now, but hang on the call. Okay.
Okay.